Some islands in Europe are empty for obvious reasons. Distance, weather, poor soil, nothing to build a life on. But these 10 islands are different. Every single one of them was inhabited, some for a few decades, some for thousands of years. Communities lived on this ground, farmed it, buried their dead in it. And then, at some point, every single person left, and nobody has ever come back to stay. These are not remote rocks, nobody bothered with. These are islands that were abandoned, and the reasons why are on record. From plague pits to biological weapons, from political killings to sudden natural disasters, from the sea taking one last shipwreck to something that has never been officially explained. 10 islands, all still visible on the map, all still empty. Stay for number 1. An island where the government of an entire country walked away in a single day and left behind buried weapons capable of killing tens of thousands. Number 10. Comachina Island, Italy, pronounced Comachina. In the middle of Lake Como sits a single small island, about 600 meters long, covered in the ruins of ancient stone churches, officially deserted since the year 1269. For centuries, Comachina was one of the wealthiest and most fortified religious communities in northern Italy. Monasteries, a basilica, 9 churches on a single small island. In the year 1269, the rival city of Como attacked Comachina during a regional war. The entire community was destroyed, every building razed, the population killed or driven off. The Bishop of Como then placed a formal curse on the island, forbidding anyone from ever building on it again under threat of divine punishment. The curse has held for over 750 years. Nobody has built a home on Comachina since 1269, not one. The ruins are still there, overgrown, silent, visible from the shore. The occasional tourist boat lands during the day. Nobody stays after sunset. Local fishermen on Lake Como will tell you plainly. The island belongs to what happened there. Number 9. Mingulay, Scotland. At the southern tip of the Outer Hebrides sits Mingulay, continuously inhabited for over 2,000 years. Iron Age remains. Viking settlement, a Gaelic-speaking community that peaked at around 150 residents in the 1880s. By 1912, every single resident had gone. Life on Mingulay was called impossible. The waters around the island were so violent that residents said it was easier to reach America than to land on their own rocky shore. Storms trapped families inside their homes for weeks. The population began abandoning the island one family at a time in the early 1900s. The final residents left in 1912. Behind them, they left a school, a church, a priest's house, and the stone foundations of dozens of homes. Local folklore holds an older story of a man named McPhee sent to the island by a boat crew to collect dues. When he arrived, every resident was already dead from a mysterious plague. His crew abandoned him on the island to avoid infection. He lived alone in the empty village for an entire year before another ship rescued him. Whether the McPhee story is historically accurate is disputed. What is not disputed is that Mingulay has stood empty for over 110 years. The stone walls of the village are still there. So is the schoolhouse. The Atlantic has been slowly taking them back ever since. Number 8. Poveglia, Italy, pronounced Poveglia. Poveglia sits in the Venetian lagoon, fully visible from Venice itself, a 10-minute boat ride from St. Mark's Square, and it has been officially closed to the public for over 50 years. During plague outbreaks in the 14th and 18th centuries, Poveglia became Venice's primary quarantine station. Anyone showing signs of infection was sent here. Estimates suggest that over 100,000 people died on the island across those centuries, many buried in mass pits still traceable in the soil composition today. Some accounts claim as much as half of the surface soil is composed of human ash and bone. In 1922, a mental hospital was built on the island. It operated until 1968. Reports and later investigations described conditions that were extreme by any standard. The doctor who ran the asylum in its final years is said to have died by falling from the bell tower under circumstances that were never publicly explained. In 2014, the Italian government attempted to lease Poveglia to a private developer. The winning bidder ultimately walked away. Nobody will build on it. Venetian fishermen still refuse to cast nets in the water immediately around the island. When asked why, they will not answer directly. They will simply say that the water there is different. Number 7. Foula, Shetland Islands, Scotland. Foula lies 20 miles west of the Shetland mainland, one of the most remote inhabited islands in the British Isles. Population 30, sometimes fewer. Technically, Foula is still inhabited, but most of the island stands abandoned. Whole villages emptied in the 20th century. Stone crofts still standing. Roofs collapsed. Doors open to the North Atlantic wind. Foula's residents still follow the old Julian calendar. Christmas falls on the 6th of January. New Year on the 13th. A visible reminder that this island exists on a different time from the rest of Europe. The abandoned settlements of Foula carry a particular weight. Not folklore, documented history. The population has collapsed repeatedly across centuries due to shipwrecks, fishing tragedies, and a smallpox outbreak in 1720 that killed all but a handful of residents. The current 30 inhabitants live in modern homes at one end of the island. The empty crofts stand at the other end, and nobody on Fula will tell you they feel unlived in. They simply feel unused, which is not the same thing. Number 6. Naval Rocks, Isles of Scilly, England. Off the western tip of Cornwall, the Isles of Scilly scatter across the Atlantic. Most are inhabited, a few are not. The uninhabited ones share one thing in common: a body count from the Scilly naval disaster of 1707. In October 1707, a British Royal Navy fleet under Admiral Sir Cloudesley Shovel struck the Scilly rocks in bad weather. 4 warships went down, around 2,000 sailors drowned in a single night. Bodies washed up on the smaller uninhabited islands for months. Local records described residents from the inhabited islands rowing out to collect the dead and bury them in the cliff soil. The bodies of the drowned were still surfacing during storms decades after the disaster. Today, the uninhabited Scilly rocks are visited only by seabird researchers and the occasional guided boat tour. Visitors report the same thing: an absolute silence, broken only by wind and gulls. Ground that walks strangely underfoot in specific patches. The seabird researchers who work these islands know exactly which patches, and they do not stop to eat lunch on them. Number 5. Ilha de Berlenga, Portugal. Pronounced Ilha de Berlenga. 10 kilometers off the Portuguese coast sits a small granite island crowned by an old fort. Berlenga has been inhabited only briefly across its known history. Each attempt ended badly. In 1552, a group of monks attempted to establish a monastery on the island. They were repeatedly attacked by pirates. Storms wrecked their supply ships. Within a few decades, the monastery was abandoned, every monk either dead or evacuated. In 1651, a Spanish naval force of over 1,000 men laid siege to the island. It was defended by a garrison of 28 Portuguese soldiers, who held out for 3 days before being overwhelmed. Every defender was killed. Their bodies were left where they fell. The fort was rebuilt. Attempted settlement failed again. The island now hosts a handful of seasonal fishermen and a small guest house in summer. In winter, nobody stays. Local Portuguese fishermen have a saying: Berlenga does not want to be lived on. It has told everyone who tried. Number 4. Isola di Nisida, Italy. Pronounced Nisida. Just off the coast of Naples sits a small volcanic island called Nisida. It has been used for one purpose across most of the past 2 centuries: imprisonment. Nisida held a Bourbon prison in the 17 and 1800s. Political prisoners of the Kingdom of the Two Sicilies were sent here. Many never left. The island later became a juvenile detention facility, which is still technically operational for a very small number of inmates today, but the residential population of Nisida is effectively 0. The old prison quarters stand empty. So does the mansion where the Marquis of Nisida was executed in 1799 by revolutionary forces during the short-lived Neapolitan Republic. A history so violent that Naples locals still refer to the island as the place where names get erased. Nisida is fully visible from the Naples coastline. Nobody visits. Even the fishing boats that pass close do not linger. Number 3. Isla de Albarán, Spain. In the middle of the Mediterranean, between Spain and Morocco, sits a tiny volcanic island called Albarán, just over half a square kilometer. Since the 16th century, it has been used almost exclusively for one thing: executions. Albarán was named after a Tunisian pirate called Albarani, who used the island as a base in the 1500s. When Spanish forces eventually captured the island, they made an example of what they found there. Every prisoner was executed on the rocks, their bodies left unburied. For the next several centuries, Albarán served as a Spanish military execution site. Political prisoners, deserters, enemies of the crown, sent to the island and killed there, their remains buried in shallow graves in the thin volcanic soil. Today, Albarán hosts a small Spanish military detachment on a rotational basis, a handful of soldiers, for a few weeks at a time. No permanent residents, no civilians. Personnel who have served there describe the rotation as difficult, not because of the isolation, because of what several of them have consistently reported hearing at night: voices coming from the graves. Number 2. Suomenlinna Prison Islands, Finland. Pronounced Suomenlinna. Suomenlinna is a sea fortress on 8 islands just off the coast of Helsinki. Today, it is a UNESCO World Heritage Site and popular tourist destination. 6 of the 8 islands are inhabited, but 2 of them are not. And the reason for that is one of the darkest chapters in Finnish history. At the end of the Finnish Civil War in 1918, the victorious white side established a prison camp on the outer islands of Suomenlinna. Approximately 8,000 captured red soldiers were held there, conditions inside the camp were catastrophic. Malnutrition, overcrowding, untreated disease. Estimates suggest that between 1,500 and 3,000 prisoners died within a matter of months, buried in mass graves on the outer islands. The prison closed. The main fortress islands became a tourist destination. The two islands that held the camp are today publicly accessible, but effectively deserted, fenced, uninhabited. The mass graves are formally marked. Finnish visitors go quiet when they walk through them. Suomenlinna as a whole is one of the most visited historical sites in Finland, but the outer islands hold something that Helsinki has never fully processed, and nobody has moved on to them in over a century. Number 1. Vozrojdenia Island, Aral Sea, pronounced Vozrojdenia. In 1992, Russian military personnel evacuated the island of Vozrojdenia in the Aral Sea in a period of 24 hours. They left behind trucks, cars, documents, restaurant menus, a complete military infrastructure, and something significantly more dangerous. Vozrojdenia was the Soviet Union's primary biological weapons testing site. From the 1940s through 1991, Soviet scientists tested anthrax, plague, smallpox, tularemia, weaponized versions of diseases capable of killing hundreds of thousands of people. The island was so classified that it did not appear on Soviet maps. Personnel were reportedly transported to the island blindfolded, so they could not disclose its location. Over 1,500 people lived and worked there at its peak. When the Soviet Union collapsed, the entire program was shut down in a single day. Personnel evacuated. Everything left in place. Live cultures of biological agents were buried in canisters across the island, rather than destroyed properly. Some of those cultures remain viable to this day. Anthrax spores can survive in soil for over 100 years. In 2002, a joint Kazakh-American operation attempted to neutralize the largest of the buried anthrax deposits. They succeeded with the known sites. The remaining ones are considered unaccounted for. Because of the drying of the Aral Sea, Vozrojdenia is technically no longer an island. The water around it has receded to the point where the former island is now accessible by land vehicle from Kazakhstan, which makes the abandoned biological weapons site more accessible than it has ever been. Officially, nobody is permitted to visit. Unofficially, scavengers have been reported on the island, looking for metal, looking for equipment, looking for anything to sell. Whatever is still buried there is waiting. 10 islands, a cursed lake island in Italy that nobody has built on for 700 years. A Scottish community that quietly disappeared into the Atlantic weather. A Venetian island where the soil itself is half human. A Shetland outpost living on a different calendar from the rest of Europe. A cluster of rocks that still surface bodies from a 300-year-old shipwreck. A Portuguese fort that no settlement has ever survived. A Neapolitan prison where the names get erased. A Spanish execution rock where the voices still come. Finnish fortress with mass graves nobody talks about. And a Soviet island where the weapons of a dead empire are still buried in the sand. Every one of these islands is still on the map. Every one of them is still empty, and every one of them has a reason for it that is on the record. If you have visited any of these places, or one like them near you, tell me in the comments. The stories that are not on the map are the ones I want most. Subscribe for more of this. Next time we go somewhere the sea has not finished with yet.